John, let's start recording.
Got it.
And then you're going to send me something from either Torchy's Tacos or Al or Rosario's.
Maybe Al, if you go there right after this show, get it the FedEx. Maybe Al, you can have it for breakfast.
I doubt it. God, don't I wish. I love Mexican food. Tex-Mex.
Yeah.
I love Tex-Mex.
Yeah, well, you got to come visit us, and we're going to visit you in Tanglewood. But it's
Not this
time
year.
to be- okay.
No
okay.
Tanglewood.
I know. Abbie, you ready?
Yep.
I'm ready. John, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
And this is Jim Eskin on behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training. It's my privilege to welcome you to number 15 in our nonprofit empowerment webinar series. And it's a very timely topic. It's boards stepping up to the challenge. And before we proceed, I'd like to introduce our producer, John Largent, who's CEO of Game Day Media, to take a second to review some of the logistical information, particularly how people can type questions in.
Hi, everybody. This is John Largent, and if you have any questions, you can go into the Q&A, either at the bottom of your screen if you're using a laptop, or the top of your screen if you're using a pad or maybe on your phone. You can also put in comments in the chat section. And at the end of the session, any questions you have, we'll answer those in the order in which they receive. And we encourage you to ask as many questions as you can. Thanks, Jim.
You know, board members are so important.
What happened to Jim?
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
We lost you for a second, Jim.
Okay, well, you know, too bad. You're not going to lose me for 60 minutes. But it can be sort of daunting. We have a genuine expert on everything philanthropy, and someone I haven't known that long. I'm so proud now that she's done 2 of our webinar series here in the course of 5 weeks. She's going to get a fuller introduction, but first let me introduce one of the grandmasters of the philanthropy world, Abbie J. von Schlegell, who's in Pittsville, Massachusetts. First of all, Abbie, how are you and your loved ones doing?
I'm fine, thanks. We are all healthy. My daughter started a new job day before yesterday that she got offered during the pandemic, which is amazing to me.
Well, you got me. I'm sorry, I'm curious. This is off script, but what is the job? If you can
Oh, she's director of leadership giving at the Hotchkiss School, which is a boarding school in Northwestern Connecticut.
Abbie is going to get a fuller introduction in a second, but she has 2 credentials after her name. One is Certified Fundraising Executive, CFRE. I think maybe at best, maybe 5% of professional fundraisers have that. And then she has something else, FAFP, which is a Distinguished Fellow of the Association of Fundraising Professionals. To tell you what a signal honor that is, there are 10 of those people on the planet. For perspective, 12 people have walked the moon. So Abbie, it is such a pleasure to welcome you back as an expert to our series. You know, there's a lot of different interpretations of what we want board members to do. Abbie, I had my first foundation chairman said, I want to keep it this simple. It's the 3 G's, give, get, or get off. But the truth is, it's not that simple. And there are a lot of different roles that board members play. They come from different backgrounds, but I think they share this one profound common denominator, and that is a superpower, that is passion. And by the way, for all of you in the audience that are board members, type in, I'm a board member strong. Type that in, board member strong, if you're a board member. John, or you're all driven by passion that we admire so much. And now, by the way, if you're not a board member, but you're a staff member that works with a board member, type in, we love our board members, okay? We love our board members because they're driven by passion. By the way, there's something like 1.5 million nonprofits in the country. Abbie, I was trying to do some research on then how many board members do we have if we have 1.5 million nonprofits? I think that most states have a minimum requirement of 3.
Yes,
and
correct.
They go much, much larger.
Yes.
The average, national average, I think, is some point like 9.2. And if my bad math is correct, I mean, we have 15 million nonprofit board members in the country. Thank you for what you do to make our country and our world better, because it's right here. Abbie and I will tell you that when nonprofits do well, we all do well, because I can't think of any other organization and sector that has such a personal role in touching, improving, and save lives. And we needed you before COVID-19, and we need you even more. Now, we know that nonprofits are no strangers to financial pressures. You've had it all the time. And this is a particularly profound moment of challenge, because your resources are being challenged precisely as the needs are escalating, okay? And so, you know, Abbie, nonprofits have always been known to be able to stretch nickels into dimes, but now they have to stretch them into quarters. And that's what the board members and staff have to do. We have one other mantra we like to repeat. And we were saying that I don't care what your nonprofit was, you were doing essential work before March of 2020. And now whatever you're doing is even more essential. So I want everybody to type in nonprofit strong. I want to ask our special guest, Abbie, what are we?
Nonprofit strong.
We're nonprofit strong. Okay, thank you. And a point of background, Andrea and I launched Eskin Fundraising back in June of 2018. And I had the privilege of working with community and business leaders at 3 institutions of higher education who I found were fearless about everything they had to do in their lives, except what, Abbie? Ask for a gift.
Ask for money.
Right. And I think most fear is fear of the unknown. So I decided to declare war on fear of asking for the gift, and I've enjoyed working with nonprofits over the last 2.5 years. We do a monthly newsletter. And by the way, we are going to send out the slides to everybody who's on the webinar today, and if you registered and not on it, your mistake, but we're still going to send you the slides. And we're also going to post them on LinkedIn and Facebook. And if some reason you're not in my database, I'd like you to click there, and that will let you receive my monthly newsletter. And I was proud. I'm a couple of books behind Abbie, but last year I published my first book.
I only have one.
Abbie, I hope one reached you. Okay, you beat me, but I hope, by the way, my copy of my book reached you.
It just arrived yesterday.
Oh, good, good. It's only 80 pages.
It's on my coffee table.
Good. You can read it probably in 3 cups. We're very proud of our summer series. We're trying to make topics that are very relevant to the challenges and the opportunities facing the sector. And I'm so pleased to have Abbie advise about board development and best use of board members. We're going to ask now for a little poll. We do this every week. You know, we like to talk about the 4 distinct parts of the gift cycle. Abbie and I, what we call, number 1 is discovery, who we can ask for money. The second part is cultivation. I believe, Abbie, you like engagement. Okay, so, and number 3 is the obvious, and that's the who, what, where, when, and for how much we ask. And finally, we close the gift continuum by acknowledging and thanking the donor and stewardship, because we're going to go back to Abbie next year, and we're going to ask her to consider to give again and consider increasing the amount of her gift.
Yeah, definitely increasing.
We'd like to get your input on which of these topics you'd like to see addressed. Type in A for discovery, B for cultivation, or Abbie, engagement, C for solicitation, or D for stewardship. Type in your answer. Let's see what
Oh,
your
I
choices
can't
are.
type in.
Abbie, you don't have a vote, sorry.
No, I don't have a vote.
John, are we getting some responses? And then they'll pop up here. Okay, and this time stewardship, I think, is one. You know, it's been interesting, Abbie. We seem to get a different majority on each of those issues. And we ask you one other question. A fundraiser is A, born, or B, made? So go in, type A or B.
Thank you, Jamie, or Jaime, however you pronounce your name.
Let's see, John, are we getting responses? And we have, oh, I like that. Abbie, we wouldn't have jobs. I didn't think they were made. So
Totally right. Jaime,
that.
thank you, Jaime.
And we like to say that we can take anybody that has a knowing head and an honest heart and is committed to their cause with that passion and is willing to learn, that we can turn them into a very effective fundraiser. And I like, we were introduced, by the way, and I will be forever grateful, by Marv Leroy, who's been on this series a couple times himself, who established the Institute for Philanthropic Excellence. And he uses the mantra that more money equals more mission. And remember, money is not the end. It's just the means to the end. And that philanthropy is not just money. It's the giving of time and money to help make life better for others. And I don't think it's ever been so important. I want to give a brief. If I was to spend reading her full CV, it would be happy hour time by now. But
and I would really be in the middle of a thunderstorm.
Again, is one of, she's one of 10 individuals on the planet to receive the Distinguished Fellow Award from the Association of Fundraising Professionals. Again, 12 people walk the moon. Okay, you got them beat, Abbie. And she, she's a genuine pioneer in the study of women in philanthropy. In fact, when she was with us on June 10th, she shared her wealth of wisdom and experience and the motivation, the mindset, and the trigger points of women in philanthropy. She is easily one of the best known and respected authorities in our profession. I got to tell you, and it's a little intimidating for a guy like me to work with her, but I'm learning a lot. She has been in the field for over 40 years, a consultant for about 20 years, and she was a senior development officer for some very prestigious institutions, including Stanford and the University of Chicago. And I could say a lot more. And also, she's in a beautiful spot of the country. She's in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. It's about how many miles away are you from Tanglewood?
6.
6 miles. Okay. Well, Abbie, are you ready to start? This is the way it's going to work. We have
absolutely. Let's go.
We have about 15 questions, and around 40 after the hour, we're going to go to the audience and see where we are. Abbie,
Jim, could you ask how many of this audience are board members?
Okay, let's try that. If you're a board member, type in board member. We typically get, at least 40%.
Okay, we got, Jaime does have one. Susan, they're there. I mean, they're coming in board member, which I'm thrilled.
And remember, the ones that aren't board members are staff members, and they love board members.
No, I understand that.
So, Abbie, what do you say we get with the questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you. Let's start with the basics, okay? We're going to go from the simple to the not so simple. How do you recommend a nonprofit determine what size board is the best for them?
Actually, I've been thinking about that for the past week because there's no answer, and I'm a consultant, so I'll give you the consultant answer. It depends.
I love that.
Which is the textbook consultant answer. It does completely depend on the size of your organization. If you have a fundraising need, if you need to fundraise, not all nonprofits do need to fundraise. Some of them are funded entirely by the government. If you are funded entirely by the government, whatever level government, I don't care. If I were you, I would start seriously thinking about fundraising. If you do need, well, because the federal government and many state governments have spent a heck of a lot of money during this past crisis, or we're still in the crisis. So in Texas, the numbers are rising again. I can tell you Massachusetts is in great shape. We have masks, but we don't worry about all the rest of it. I mean, I wear masks, I wear gloves when I go shopping, but we're in very good shape. We have very few cases, and we don't have anything rising. If you need to do fundraising, and if you are a large organization or a larger organization, I would say 5 million and over, for sure you need to have a good sized board, and it's all about orientation. When you recruit them, you need to be very clear that fundraising is part of their job.
Okay, let's get into that in a moment. But let me ask another very foundational question. How often should boards meet?
I think at least 4 times a year.
Okay.
I don't think they have to meet monthly. A lot of boards do meet monthly, but I like the kind of every other month model. But if you don't meet at least 4 times a year, nobody knows anyone else. Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the most common formulas is 4 times a year.
Yeah, but I don't think it's enough.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, let's get to another real basic question. What essential committees do you believe a board should organize?
Finance, development, governance. Are you looking for something else, Jim?
The governance committee, is that nominating? Is that nominating, or what do you mean by governance?
Nominating is part of governance, but evaluating the board, doing a regular board self-evaluation on at least an every other year basis, if not, I don't think annual is necessary, but I certainly think that every other year is important. Also making certain and providing any professional development for the board, making certain that they learn about the agency or the organization or the college or the university, whatever it is. That's a governance responsibility too.
Okay, you kind of made a reference to this earlier, so I want you to expand on it. But what constitutes an effective board orientation process?
If somebody wants a sample agenda for that, we just developed one on a board that I'm just stepping off of, having been on it for 7 years. And it's specific to the agency, but it doesn't matter because it starts with, meet the executive director, have a tour of the facilities. We have multiple facilities. Understand exactly what the agency does, how our funding is structured, et cetera. I mean, I think all those things are critical. And you do not invite your next door neighbor good old Joe, let's invite Joe to join the board because actually he lives next door and I know him and I see him all the time. And he told me that he's looking for something to get involved in. He knows nothing about your agency. He knows nothing about what you do with it. He knows nothing about being a board member. And he's the wrong person to recruit onto the board.
I'm kind of laughing. I know I've been guilty in organizations. We had a lot of neighbors, but hey, getting back to the orientation process, are you hearing anything on how that's being conducted in the virtual environment?
Yeah, it can still be done virtually, no question.
Yeah.
You can have people meet on Zoom. You can give them a tour with your phone by walking through the agency. You certainly also have to provide them with materials, provide them with the latest strategic plan, with the roster of the employees, the roster of the board. I mean, all of that is a classic board packet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You already know, Jim, I can go on talking, question. So you have to keep asking me.
I know. Okay, I'll keep on. Okay, and I'll nudge you. Describe an optimum working relationship between the CEO and ED and the board chair. That's so huge.
I think that they should talk potentially weekly, just to check in. If not every 2 weeks at a minimum, so that the board chair knows what the issues are that are going on, if there's anything that needs to be addressed. It's also very important that those two people have a good understanding of what their individual responsibilities are and where the places are that people overstep. So I think they need to know one another well.
You led in perfectly to the next question.
Okay.
I think it pops up way too often. What's the most effective way to clearly differentiate and enforce the boundaries and responsibilities for board and staff? Boy, that's a biggie.
Written job descriptions. And
okay,
that everybody has read and discussed and agreed on. And I'm also a big fan of people signing them, particularly with board members. Yeah. And then as part of the board orientation for new board members, and even in the early part when you're recruiting a board member, I think you need to be clear about what the responsibilities of board members are and how it doesn't involve anything with the staff.
Yeah, yeah, and that comes up
and I don't
lot.
care if you live next door to the program vice president.
There we go, the neighbors, the fence neighbors. I'm interested in hearing your answer to this one. Are there any reasons you wouldn't want one of your major donors to serve on the board?
That's a common problem or common hope for nonprofits to have major donors on the board. You just have to make certain that the major donor is not going to try and influence decision making, because he or she feels that.
Well, then it depends. How do you do that? That sounds like a tough one.
You have to be pretty clear with the board member. That's back to the orientation thing again. And somebody like the board chair or the governance chair needs to check in with that donor board member and say, I hope everything is fine with you. Do you have any concerns? Share them with me. Don't share them necessarily in public with the whole board. That way it could be confidential, because the board member needs to understand that he has nothing, or she has nothing to do with supervising the staff, giving direction to the staff, influencing the staff, nothing. Board members are doing policy and raising money.
Right. Okay, that's sort of, I tell you, each question leads into the next one. Unfortunately, it's likely that we're going to see a lot of nonprofits have to reduce the size of their staff. Typically, payroll makes up anywhere from 2/3 to 3/4 of their expenses. How do you feel boards should be involved in such decision making?
They shouldn't. There's no reason why they would be involved.
No way, no how?
Right, no way, no how.
Okay.
Now let me make a big exception to that. There are organizations that are all volunteer organizations, and the board is running the organization.
I think the Assistance League is a good example, or pretty close to that.
Absolutely it is. They may have, I mean, some leagues have an office with some administrative help. And I don't know about the league in San Antonio, but certainly in Los Angeles, they did. They had a full staff because it was a very large league. And I remember meeting the staff. But again, the board has nothing to do with hiring and firing the staff or doing evaluations of the staff or going directly to a staff member to try and influence something. Absolutely not. Goes through the executive director or the CEO. And actually, that's something we talked about at the National Assistance League Conference.
Okay. Hey, with 100% board participation and annual giving so incredibly essential when being considered by funders, how do you suggest nonprofits set annual giving requirements for board members?
It's not the amount that matters, it's the percentage.
Talk a little more about that.
Well, I don't think that only arts organizations tend to have a minimum amount. That's fairly common within the cultural sector. If you're going to join this board, you have to give $15,000 a year or whatever. The Shakespeare Theater, where I was head of development, we had this was now 15 years ago, we had a $15,000 annual gift expected from a board member. And we had one board member who we had to pull teeth to get the money out of him. And it was ridiculous. I mean, if I told you who this person was and what he did, you wouldn't know his name, but you would know what he did. It was very public, very national, very obvious. And he just didn't want to do it. And I had a fit because that was my job, but I couldn't do anything about it other than trying to influence the other board members to get him to do it. But I'm a firm believer that it's more that a percentage. I want everyone on the board to make a gift. I don't care if it's $1. I don't care if it's 50 cents. The way you make that case is to say, okay, how much does it cost you to go to the movies? How much does it cost you to buy an iced coffee? Give us that instead of buying the iced coffee. There is no one. I mean, I've been on many boards or consulted with many boards where there were mandated members of the community on the board. So people from low-income housing or people from shelters, and they made gifts. And other board members who were lawyers and things like that didn't. Not acceptable. And then that's another role of the governance committee. The governance committee needs to sit down with them and say, okay, we understand if you're not making a gift right now, but do you want to continue on this board?
You know, Abby, this is almost scary. Your answer leads to our next question. We didn't set it up that way.
I know.
But I know this is and all the organizations, this has been a tough one. What's the best way to eliminate board members who have failed to meet expectations?
What I just said. Sit down with them, go over the expectations.
How about if they're your neighbor?
I would do it with my neighbor. Well, I probably would get the chairman of the governance committee to do it with my neighbor. But I'm clearly, everybody can tell just by listening to me, I'm a very straightforward person. And the relationship with a board member among board members is different from the relationship that the board members have with staff. They are not the supervisors of the staff. The only person on the staff who relates to the board directly is the executive director, who should be evaluated by the board or by a group of the board.
Hey, with the competition for board members is fierce, if not more fierce than the competition for major gift donors, what are your recommendations on recruiting those strong board members that can turn your nonprofit around?
I'm a big fan of having a board matrix. Again, I'm happy to share these things if you would like to have them. Just put it in chat and I'll send it to Jim, and Jim can, because Jim will have your contact information.
That's correct.
I like to have a board matrix which shows kind of a demographic and interest profile of the, Don Gleason just said, yes, he wants the resources. And so did Tim. I'm sure you can see these too. So a board matrix to me is a chart you do in Excel. Across the top are the names of all the board members. Down the left-hand side, or whatever side you want to do, is the where they live, how old are they, obviously male, female. I think in the end you probably should just send it to everybody who's on the program. I'm reading all the responses. Where they live, what do they do? What sector do they work in? If it's a question of, if it's a college, you want to know what they majored in. And if it's a human service agency, you want to know what they do, because they might be things where you might be able to find resources for them. We have a question here from Joel. I want you to just keep track of that question, Jim.
Okay, John, we're going to get to that in about 3 minutes.
Because it's a good question.
Okay, and it doesn't surprise me. Joel's one of our regular learners.
Back to the board matrix. You want to know if they have any particular other, like if they serve on other boards that are completely directly related to you. You want to know that too. So you just want to get a profile of the people who are on the board now, and then it shows you loud and clear where you have holes and where you need to find people.
Abbie, let's throw a question at you that's very timely. Of course, this world now we live in is virtual, not in person. So how do you recommend that nonprofits revise their agendas and the other meeting mechanics to work in a virtual versus an in-person environment?
Well, we're doing it right now, virtually. And you have an agenda for this. You have a list of questions. It's actually no different with the Zoom feature and some of the other things, but I like Zoom because you can see one another.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people quickly developing competitors to Zoom.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't change it a whole lot because I've served on 2 boards. We've had all our meetings virtually in the past 3 months. And
how's attendance been, by the way?
Fine, just fine.
Yeah, probably
because
even
sometimes
better.
we can get sometimes better because you can get people where they don't have time to drive to where the board meeting is.
Yeah.
But since they're doing it from home, it's easy for them. We're also going to do a board retreat virtually, which for a nonprofit that I'm on, where I'm on the board, and I had suggested we have it at my house because I have a covered patio in the back, and it's big, so we could be socially distanced. But there were people who still weren't comfortable with that, so we're not. And it'd be very hard for me to sit for half a day in front of my computer.
Hey, I'm going to put you on the spot. For a long time, too many nonprofits have allowed board members to bypass fundraising responsibilities. How does a nonprofit change that culture?
It's back to the orientation again and the role of the governance committee. It is the role of the governance committee to also provide training for the board.
Mm-hmm.
I think every board that people should be recruited with an understanding about fundraising. And fundraising does not mean you have to ask somebody for money. Fundraising means you might say to Jaime, Jaime, let me introduce you to my next door neighbor who might very well be interested in project whatever it was called. I'm sorry, Jaime, your name went off the screen quickly, so I don't know what it is. His nonprofit is called Project Something.
Yeah, I know who that is. He's working on a museum.
Oh, cool. Project Mend. Thank you. I know somebody who might be interested in Project Mend. I'd be happy to introduce the 2 of you. Maybe we could all have coffee, even coffee virtually. Although I think it's okay now, depending on where you are. Maybe not in Texas because you guys have more cases. But you certainly could do it virtually, and you would. Jaime would give the potential board member information about Project Mend, and then in advance, and then you would ask. We have a whole process for this. You'll see it in the stuff I'm going to send from Tapestry. Tapestry Help is the name of the organization where I'm just stepping off the board and the governance committee, and where you would have a description of what it means to be on the board and what are the responsibilities that are expected. And we also, when I was on the Girl Scout board, we have a philanthropy statement, philanthropy commitment. I'm going to do this much. I'm going to I'm happy to host a coffee at my house. I'm going to sign letters. I mean, people can do all kinds of things that have to do with fundraising, but without asking. Yeah,
and that leads right into our next question. You know, recognizing the action.
Jim, let's put it this way. I'm good, Jim.
I'm good. You're excellent. Recognizing the extraordinary and unprecedented financial challenges facing the nonprofit sector, how can we motivate board members to step up and be more personally involved in resource development success?
With an inspirational leader. Fundamentally, you need somebody who really is good at motivating other people to get engaged. And since I'm going to push on that Assistance League person, since the National Assistance League Conference is going to be in San Antonio, so then if I might get to come to San Antonio, I'm putting you up on the spot. I've forgotten her name.
Sheila.
Okay, Sheila, I'm teasing you, Sheila, because it's a perfect example. I've done this a whole bunch of times with boards because I'm a certified governance trainer for BoardSource. And if you don't know about BoardSource is one word, Board Source, spelled just exactly like it sounds. Used to be called the National Center for Nonprofit Boards. They have all kinds of free resources on the Board Source website. And it's even better if you become a member. And if you become an individual member, it's not expensive at all. And there's webinars and all kinds of sample descriptions. Somebody asked a question about who writes the job description, I think. Well, lots of job descriptions, lots of sample job descriptions. I have lots, but they have even more.
Yeah. Okay, Abbie, before we go to audience questions from the audience, we'll start with Joe, but we're not there yet. I think this one's a tough one. We're going to get into a very resource challenged environment. And how do you recommend boards consider taking possible actions such as mergers, consolidation, partnerships, and let's face it, even dissolution?
Well, I'm a firm believer in taking a hard look at all those things because number one, there's an awful lot of duplication in the nonprofit sector now. People are doing almost exactly the same thing, although they'll tell you that it's not.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you're right.
of course, they'll tell you they're very different from one another. But actually, if they're similar enough, they could consider merging or consider a professional affiliation or consider shared services.
Yeah.
And I think with the electronic world the way it is now, I think shared services make tremendous sense. By that, I mean shared databases, shared computers, shared technology, even shared staff. I know people who have shared staff.
Wow. Wow.
Somebody works half-time here and half-time there.
Abbie, what do you say we go to the audience and we'll start? John, do you have Joel's question? We'll let
Getting
him go
darker and
first.
darker here.
Yeah, I do. Joel's question is, who writes the responsibilities of the board member?
Okay. We have, Abbie and I have an arrangement. It's a very easy question. I take it. If it's a more challenging one, she takes it. I'm delegating this one to Abbie.
Okay. Hopefully a staff member. You would pull a sample job description off of one or another of these websites that I just talked about. The main website is BoardSource. And I'm also, that's another thing I can send as a sample board job description. I'm going to send that, and I'm also going to send the philanthropy statement.
Yeah. By the way, are those all links on your website?
No.
Okay. So I'll tell you when you send that. Can you hyperlink those? That's what I'll send out to folks, or however you want to make that easy.
I was just going to send you documents.
Okay. PDFs.
Yeah.
Okay. I can do that.
Charlotte just asked a question.
Okay. John, what's Charlotte's question?
Well, we've got another one in the Q&A from Kathy. She said, we formed your 3 recommended committees, but the chair of each committee failed to engage the committee and follow through. 12-member board, $2 million nonprofit. What is the follow-up with board members of good intention that do not follow through?
Use your board chair.
The guillotine?
Pardon me?
We're going to use a guillotine, not that extreme.
Oh,
okay.
right. No, I don't think so, Jim. I don't think a guillotine is a good idea. I mean, that would be nice, but it's not very practical. Then you'd lose a board member.
Yeah.
I think it's sit down and have a straightforward conversation. Do you still want to do this? Do you want to be involved? Yes, yes, Impact Essay. It's a very good book, 10 Basic Responsibilities of Nonprofit Boards. I have one. It's on my shelf. And I could get it and show it to you, but that's basically the name, 10 Basic Responsibilities of Nonprofit Boards. And the best thing to do is go over that with your board members. Maybe even review it at the beginning of the year every year. I think that's actually a good idea.
By the way, one of the things I like, Abbie, is when you have board members actually sign, preferably a one-page document that delineates very clearly their commitments of time, talent, and treasurer.
Right. And you know, there's another one. There are W's too.
Work, wisdom, wealth.
And wealth. Yeah.
Wallop, and women. Or the 3 G's. No, that was, remember Gerald Panis had the 5 W's. Work, wisdom, wealth, wallop, and women. Because women make things happen. I learned from the June 10th webinar. Or give, get, or get off. But let's go. We got another question. Was it from Charlotte?
Yeah. What can an executive director do with a board that does not see their role as fundraising and thinks all of the duties belong to the executive director? We do not, and this is in brackets. We do not have a development director or staff.
So there's an executive director as the only staff? That's a rhetorical question, I realize, because you don't know the answer. But she
I know
would.
that in this case I do. And I think in this case, she has some interns, but she's the only professional staff member.
Okay, here's a thought. Go to a board member of another organization who you respect, who you think is doing a good job, and ask him if they would come to your board meeting and talk about their experiences as a board member. It's very helpful to bring a peer in who people know, and people love to be asked for advice. They don't like to be asked for money, but they like to be asked for advice. So if you ask someone because they're highly respected in the community, would they please come and talk to our board about what it means to be a board member, including fundraising and including giving, because giving is sometimes a problem too. I'm giving you my time. Why should I give you any money?
Yeah.
Wrong. I think that can be extremely effective because you guys have already exhausted all your own resources.
Right. Do we have some other questions from the audience, John?
That's it from the participants right now, Jim.
Okay, we might have some more. I'd like to summarize, and Abbie, I'd like you to come in and out of this conversation, and these are some of the resources we're going to make available in addition to some of the learning tools that Abbie mentioned. But there are a lot of components to a high-functioning board, you know, and here's the good thing. Abbie, you were talking about getting a diverse board, and that means diverse in every way, including skill sets. And
Yep.
So that's part of your matrix, is to make sure that you don't have all lawyers, nothing against lawyers, nothing against all accountants or doctors. You want to have the full spectrum of skills covered in your board roster.
Yes.
And you want to work, I love boards and tell you how you make where you can tap the wisdom of the whole. To me, the best board is in which everyone participates and no one dominates. I tell you,
Good luck on that one.
On the board meetings, and it's how do you make that a reality? Everyone participates, but no one dominates.
Well, the no one dominates is thanks so much, Mary. We really appreciate your
The last hour.
perspective on this, but we really want to let some other people in the room have a chance to speak.
Yeah. And that really is where Abbie has said the classic consultant's answers when it comes to structural considerations, it depends. You have boards. We were saying that most states have a requirement of a minimum of 3, and you have boards sometimes that can be 50. The average, I believe, is 9. Abbie said that a good formula is meeting 4 times a year. Abbie, maybe I have a little bias as I get older and more gray. I'm leaning more to the small focused board. You know, give me 10 people that are completely committed and are passionate and work cohesively a team, as opposed to a board of 25 and only 10 are contributing. I think that board of 10 will end up in a better place.
It just depends completely on how committed they are. I mean, if you have, the board I'm just leaving has now 17 people on it. We have worked very hard to make certain that they know exactly what's expected of them, and I'm thrilled that it's looking so good.
Right.
So I think 10 is small. Okay. And I also think it's very important to have an uneven number.
Okay. Good for voting, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, let's talk a little about the do's and the don'ts. I heard the big G word from you, governance, the setting of policy. That belongs to the board. Setting the vision. I think particularly now, how do you tweak your vision? How do you take a look at the timeliness of your mission statement? And finally, the big decisions, not what type of food's going to be served when you have your gala, when we finally have galas again.
No.
But strategic decisions should be made by the board. And by the way, this is a time that's full of strategic decision making. I would say on the don'ts, Abbie, you hit this hard. Their job is not to micromanage and to pick menus and to pick venues Their job is not to direct the staff. I mean, I know a common issue is you can have a overzealous board member that has a lot of time in his or her hands, and they're calling staff all the time.
Ah,
And he said, well, I think you need the board chair and the CEO to team up and get that straightened out. And the last thing you know, it is a privilege and an honor because passion is driving people to serve on that board, and you can't have people that aren't informed. I mean, right now it's so hard to inform people, and you can't have people spreading bad information, particularly board members. I heard this, if you're going to invest anything, invest in the next two components. Number one, invest in your recruitment process. It should be like recruiting a major donor, right? In some
right,
way,
that's right.
the benefit can be more sustainable and lasting, okay? And also recruit in that orientation, because let them start with a clean slate and a clear understanding. Abbie, I hate to say, too many times I've saw organizations, and we won't mention who they are, but board members were told, hey, don't worry about fundraising. Others do that, and guess what? You lose them from the get-go. So as Abbie said, invest in orientation and dead weight. Not only everyone who takes a seat now has to contribute work, wisdom, and wealth. I think now that everyone has to be part of the board fundraising process. As Abbie said, that's not just asking, but that's also discovering prospects. That is choice of words, cultivating.
It's engagement. It's being invited. It's coming to events to meet other prospective donors.
But there's no place now for dead weight for people who don't, because what they do, they waste the seat. And I think what they do is they drag down the rest of the board, and they set a terrible example for new board members.
Jim, Don Gleason has a question that I don't really quite understand. I'm sure it's in front of you.
No, John, can you repeat it? Actually, it isn't.
Oh,
John,
sorry.
John, do you see that question?
Yes. What is right expectation to have board organization emails to access organization websites to get information versus the staff feeding them information, which they don't seem to read anyway?
Well, looks like an answer. Abbie, you want to start with that one?
No, I don't really understand what he means.
I think I have a sense. I mean, I think a lot of boards that have the resources have board-only portals. Okay?
Oh, sure. I think those are wonderful.
And that's just taking here, and you can pick up the meeting minutes,
yes,
and dates, and hopefully you announce who's given a big gift. Don, are you getting to that? It's a matter of making the information as technologically easy to access as possible. Don, is that what you're getting to? And I know Don, he's involved in so many organizations, I can't keep up with them.
Let us know, Don, because I'm not sure of what you meant. The other way that boards can, having a board portal, you can have a board portal on the organization's website. You can also have a separate Dropbox that has all the board materials in it. Right. And that's password protected.
And I tell you what, I've seen out of my last organization, we transitioned to that, and it made life better for the staff and particularly for the board. So Abbie, would you agree we're now in an environment, everyone's going to pull their own weight and coming, and that includes in the fundraising. So that's not just asking for gifts. And what do you think about board peer mentoring?
Oh, I think it's very important. I think when a new person joins the board, they should have a board buddy that they meet, that they learn, that they meet in person. At least they meet virtually today. Don Gleason has sent an explanation. And that board buddy, experienced board member, has responsibilities to check in with the new board member, make certain they meet other board members, make certain they have all the materials, that they know how to access materials.
And if they don't understand something, they can turn to that buddy.
The board buddy, exactly.
And not have to go in front of the full board and say, I don't get it.
That's right, that's right.
Do we have a little expansion on Don Gleason's question?
Yes. It says, Don says, what's the right expectation? Which they don't seem to read anyway. My board wants the staff to feed them information, but it changes constantly. So we have websites, they can get the details, but they fail to get the email set up after 3 or 4 times setting them up.
Abbie, don't you know a challenge in any organization, corporate or nonprofit?
Doesn't matter.
One part of it is that we can push out the information, but if you're a board member, you have a responsibility to
Right.
consume that information. And
Yep.
if you don't understand, you can ask questions, but you have a responsibility to consume information. You can't do, okay?
I'm sorry, Don, I would be tempted to either call them up and walk through the procedure with them individually, or under other circumstances, go to their office and walk through walk through that, helping them set up what the emails issues are so they can get to the other websites to learn more. I understand what you're talking about now. I love this slide, Jim. That's very funny.
Oh, thank you. But I'm going to say, this is not the time to watch what everyone else is doing. This is the time for board and staff and stakeholders to get together. And the truth is, we're now in a world in which we don't know is a lot more than what we do know. But every nonprofit knows how they're being impacted by COVID, okay?
Right.
And you should be continuing to tell your story, communicate with your donors, and I believe continuing to ask, because if anything, your needs are escalating. It's a time for, boards are there to lead. Is it that simple?
Right. Totally.
We talked about, and it starts, if you don't have a chair and CEO in sync, I think, Abbie, to me, that's the best way to handle a troublesome board member.
Yes.
Or two, that, you know, the executive director is not going to have much success overcoming a troublesome board member. Say that's calling the staff all the time and asking for X and Y.
Really can't.
Yeah, he's got to be backed up by the chair.
Right.
He or she backed up by the chair. And I want to go back again, before, you know, maybe there was a feeling in nonprofits, well, Abbie and Jim can handle the fundraising. Abbie and Jim aren't the paid consultants or staff members. They're just board members that like to fundraise. And so I think we're in a competitive environment now that every board member has to accept personal responsibility.
Right. That's right.
For fundraising. And as Abbie said, that doesn't mean they have to ask, but that does mean they have to suggest prospects. They have to, depending on which word you like, cultivate and engage. And also, Abbie, I think a best way to is to thank. That's one of the easiest ways to get board members who said, you know, they're afraid of asking. Get them involved in reaching out and just making a thank you call to a donor. And by the way, what happens in our world a lot of times, you know, you just get a voicemail, but that's okay.
That's
Keep
fine.
listening to voicemail. But I think a best practice is having board members calling regularly donors, and not particularly the largest donors, but maybe the mid-sized donors, because they have a lot more potential for upsize. Probably your 6- and 7-figure donors, they're getting a lot of attention. But I'm saying now for fundraising, it's a responsibility. First of all, every board member has to give at a personally significant level. And if you asked Abbie, me, and Warren Buffett to define our personally significant giving levels, I'd imagine, Abbie, you get 3 different answers.
Probably, yeah.
But you want 100%. You want a funding agency, if it's a United Way or a Community Chest or an Impact San Antonio, they're going to have a question. What percentage of your board makes an annual gift? And if you don't have 100%, you're going to go lower down on the prospect.
Or potentially not even on the list. You'd be off the list.
Right. You can certainly suggest prospects. And I think if what you can do, why are you giving the most precious gift of all to this nonprofit? You're passionate. You believe in it. Share that story with others. But this is the bonus. I think more and more with training and board development, we can get board members asking, and they have a lot of credibility. People like Abbie and I, during our careers, we were paid to ask, okay? but it had so much credibility when a board member who was a volunteer would ask, and particularly, Abbie, it's when that board member has the closest relationship with the prospect.
Right.
It is a tremendous bonus to have them, at a minimum, I think they have to be at the ask.
Let me give you the 3 A's.
Okay.
Go back to the previous slide, if you can, because it's appropriate there. All board members, there are three A's that board members should be. They all should be ambassadors, without any question, because they should be always talking about sharing their passion for the organization with other people. They should be advocates, whether that is advocating for a particular thing with the government that might affect your nonprofit, or advocating for a particular position from the standpoint of getting something accomplished. And some, but not all of them, should be askers.
Right.
So those are your 3 A's, Jim. And not a classmate, but
the asking, I'm going to give an A+ to.
okay. The woman who came up with those is also a Stanford alum. Her name is Kay Sprinkle Grace. She's written a bunch of books, and she is literally 10 years ahead of me at Stanford.
Wow. Is she SAAP?
Pardon me?
Is she a distinguished fellow?
No, she's not.
Oh, she should be. Or else, and then you'll catch up with the people that are at Walk the Moon.
Right.
And I go back to this, Abbie, it's natural to be scared of asking for a gift, but I think it should feel good. I think it feels good to thank people. And a great way to get your board members to get their feet wet is just have them begin to thank donors. And by the way, we have statistics on that. Having board members thank unexpectedly donors, it's a great way to see the annual gift increase.
Absolutely. Let me give you an example of something we did at a Tapestry board meeting. We took a break. Our board meetings are typically an hour and a half or 2 hours. We took a break halfway in, and everybody had their cell phones, and everybody had in front of them a list of 5 names and telephone numbers and addresses and notepaper. Okay, go call all of these people and say thank you, and then write them a handwritten note and address it, and then we'll take care of mailing them.
You know, I love too, by the way, too, I love the personal phone calls. I myself am fanatical about handwritten notes, because how many handwritten notes do we receive? They stand out, and it doesn't have to be very long.
No.
You know, I just like the executive cards. I think I have this practice. I always like to get a handwritten note in the mail to a major gift donor within 24 hours. So
yep, I'm a fan.
I became an expert on where every 6 and 7 p.m. mailbox was in San Antonio. And Abbie, here's another one. You know, I think right now people are home. It's a great time to get board members to open doors.
That's right.
Virtually to the executive director, the development committee chair, the director of development. But people are home right now.
Jim,
and
the Assistants League president and I, would you go back to that previous slide? And your wife, Andrea, would say to you, you have 2 white guys, both in blue suits. Come on. Jim, you at least should make one of them a person of color or a woman or something. I couldn't resist.
Okay.
Hey, Assistants League person, I hope you agree with me.
Guess what? Guess what? You won't see that slide again. How's that? And Abbie, you're saying virtual meetings are here. I mean,
they're here.
If you're not an expert at a virtual meeting, you're so far left behind. You know, I'm trying to say you're not driving an automobile. So virtual meetings are here. Once again, boards are there to lead by example. Lead by examples in the giving and getting of gifts and the sharing of passion. That's what you all have. You have passion. You believe in something.
That's
or else
right.
You're going to be giving your time. So share that passion. Lead by example. And we like to say, these are the ways that board members can make a difference. And again, fundraising is more than just the money. It's also time. It's telling stories. But, you know, more and more funders, and particularly as we get into this incredibly competitive time, are going to look at what % of board and staff are participating in annual giving. And by the way, take a look at on the bottom, that you should be the eyes, ears, and especially the voice in community, and every board member can do that. Would you agree,
That's right.
Abbie?
Totally.
And we're going to close up here, but I know you got to think long-term, okay? I know that you're just trying to think how to get through today, but great organizations think, you know, where they want to be when you get to the other side of this crisis. And finally, Abbie said that this is a time for courage and straight talk and honesty. And you might want to have to consider mergers and partnerships for dissolution. Because remember, we're into philanthropy to touch, change, and save lives. We're not here to perpetuate organizations. It's through those organizations. But mergers, partnerships, and dissolutions might be ways that we can achieve more societal impact. And I'm going to clean up here. I always say, I'm going to finish up here. Do not let your foot off the gas pedal. For those of you who
Thank you, Marv.
For those of you who are suspending communication and asking and stewardship, you're making a grave mistake. Keep on doing. And as Abbie said, it might be a time to look at, you can't do everything, but what are those core elements that drive your mission forward? And board and management staff should be together on that. We've learned, we're doing it right now. You can fundraise from home. We can actually, I think you should be stepping up. We have an old saying that you get the donor within your virtual hug. I mean, your physical hug. Now, I guess unless you can do 6 feet, you know, you can't do that. But I think we should be stepping up. There should be more phone calls. There should be more video conference calls. There should be more personal notes. During this period, you actually should be increasing your quality communication to the donor. And I like using this example. What are we doing every day? We're probably in contact with family members, particularly they're spread around the country. We're asking how they're doing. We're updating them on how we're doing. We're asking if we can do anything to help. Do that with your donors. Go treat them like friendly and ask them, you know, is there anything the nonprofit can do for them? And again, this is all about achieving greater impact, okay? A upbeat word, I don't know if Norm is on.
No.
She likes to say nothing lasts forever, folks. There is going to be, we're going to get on the side of this, okay? But here's the important thing. I don't care who you are, everyone, even those neighbors, I guess, you know, everyone can do something. And that's how we're actually going to overcome probably the most gravest problem that we faced in the last 100 years. And also another message here, I mean, to the extent that you can send positive messages out, I just heard of a great an organization that depended on a luncheon, is going to have to skip it. And the honoree made a challenge gift that's going to get them halfway towards the profit that was raised. Share positive stories like that. Abbie, again, our job's not that complicated. It's inspiring donors about the difference their gifts can make in touching and changing and saving lives. And finally, I'm going to close with my favorite Maya Angelou quote. People will not remember what you said. They won't even remember what you did. They will never forget how you made them feel. You want to make that donor and donor prospect feel like the most important person in the world. Abbie, I give a money back guarantee for your board members and the staff people listening. Your chances of getting the gift go way up when you ask. Would you agree, Abbie?
Totally.
Well, listen, I want to thank our special guest, Abbie von Schlegell, who again is one of 10 individuals on the planet to be a distinguished fellow of the Associated Fundraising Professionals. And I want to thank our producer, John Largent, who makes sure that we don't have technological hiccups. And this is our plan. We are going to post a brief written summary on LinkedIn and Facebook right now. John does his magic spin and gets us back the recording and slides. And we're going to send that to everybody who registered. We're also going to post that on Facebook and LinkedIn. I want to thank all our nonprofit partners, be it they a board member or staff. Thank you for the wonderful work you're doing to help our country and our world deal with this pandemic. And I want to thank Abbie. You've done 2 programs in about 5 weeks. I promised to wait 1 week before I ask you to do another. and tell you what, continued good health to you and your loved ones. And let's do a fist bump.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abbie. Thank you, John. And
Thank
we'll
you.
see everybody. We'll see everyone next week.